Okay, so here we are again, back for another episode of I'm in the Shop. And yeah, things are getting a little more exciting. So we're about to put on the C3 heated handlebars. But before we do that, we need to install our C3 hoses and thermostat. Because without that, we won't be able to plumb the coolant lines that go up to these bars in order for them to be nice and toasty when we're out in the trail. So let's look at that real quick and how we're going to break all this down. Okay, so again, before we put those handlebars on, we need to install a C3 hose kit. Okay, this hose kit already comes with all the appropriate angles for my KTM 500 6 days bike. It also has some connections in here for the hoses, these tiny little guys that will run up into the handlebars. And then, of course, we have all these little adjustments and so on and so forth. Sorry, adjustments. What am I saying? The inserts that go into the bars that the hoses connect into. Right. And then, of course, a valve. And then the valve is going to be for the temperature, regulating the temperature. But first, we need to put in this groovy stuff. So let's get started. So step one, let's drain the coolant out of the bike and remove the factory hoses off the motorcycle. So in order to do that, we have a coolant drain right here that's underneath the water pump. This is the water pump housing. Underneath is a water pump that circulates your coolant through the system. So we're going to drain it from there and then take all of our hoses off. So the cross hose, the hose that goes down in the bottom of the engine, the return hose, we leave alone the cross member hose at the top. And then this is the trickiest part, and this is the part I hate the most, is removing this hose way up in here and then fitting in a large thermostat with the hoses that come down. There is just enough space, but it can be tricky. So I'm going to make the job a little bit easier. When I drain my coolant, I'm going to take my rad fan off and my rads off the side to give myself some more space to do the work. So I'm not fumbling in behind this fan or accidentally slipping with a screwdriver and poking a hole through my radiator, which would be a terrible thing to do. I've got a little bit that dribbled on the floor, but not the whole thing. And as you can see, it's out, but it's barely coming through. So if I can do this right, just pouring out. Now that I've released the cap and there's no more vacuum in there, and the air can come in and liquid can flow out. It's quite a bit in here, so you want to make sure you get a big enough bucket. These base cell margarine containers seem to do the trick. Okay, so that's pretty good. We'll probably do a better job later. And what I mean by better job is we're going to be putting Evans waterless coolant in this bike when we're all done. But that should be good enough for now. Clean that up so our cat doesn't lick it, which would be terrible. I'll put this in a safe place. KTM changed the rad caps. It's like this now. Takes a bit of muscle to take them off. Push down pretty hard and twist. Okay, so here we go. We've got our rad hose, or our radiators off, and we've got rad hose number 1, number 2, and number 3. So before I pull them off, I'll just check. It definitely looks as though that this is the cross hose that will do that job, but down lower right here. So that looks good. And then we've got our, I guess our sending hose here that goes down into the engine from the rad once the coolant's been cooled. So the only difference is between this S-bend, we've got ourselves the sending unit to, the return from the handlebars. So the fluid will come back in and return down this way. The send to the handlebars will be off the thermostat that shall be located in here, which will be these two hoses here. We'll replace however these bends go. One there, like so. And then, of course, one probably there, like so. or vice versa. We'll find out exactly how it's going to go in a few minutes. And then in between those will be our thermostat. Kind of like so. So let's take off these factory hoses and start installing the rest. Now before I put in the cross hose, I'm calling it the cross hose. I don't know if that's what it's called. That's my name for it. The hose that basically joins the two bottom of the radiators together at the bottom. I'm going to do that thermostat because this is going to be kind of in the way. So I'm pretty sure, and this has been like this for models previous to 2024, this thermostat is going to be somewhere within that hose line. Like so. But with different hoses. So we'll start with taking this off. Again, we're still getting some spillage, so have a rag on the ground. Okay, I'm going to put the phone down, make an effort to put this in, and we'll be back with you shortly.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm pretty stoked about this. It totally was not a shit show. I mean, it went so smoothly. I dread this every single year when I put this hose in with the thermostat in there. And let me tell you why it wasn't a bad experience this time. So it went in real smooth. Now I just have it kind of sitting here because I still have to put my connections on my inlets and outlets and so on and so forth for the heated handlebars and temperature probe. But I slipped that in with virtually no issues whatsoever. This in the past has been a headache to get the hoses to slip way up in the older KTMs. It was always a bitch. So KTM has put in this really convenient, it's a piece of plastic or whatever. It connects with the upper hose, and then it's actually threaded in the middle. So if you ever had to remove the hose inside the frame, now you just take it, you thread it out with a set of channel locks or something small, and then the whole hose comes out. But regardless, it was a dream to put this in. It was so simple. C3, so I think that basically it's a mixture between C3 knocking it out of the park and KTM making awesome updates. So the awesome update from KTM, this piece of plastic in here that connects to the hose inside the frame. I'm not fighting to try to get the C3 hoses way up in there to connect tight and then fighting with a hose clamp. C3 also, I don't know what they did, but they molded it. So this hose here was a smaller end diameter to go into the thermostat, and this hose, this end of the hose, was wider to fit that thicker diameter going up in the bike. So that was awesome. Thank you, C3. What a great experience that was. They've also changed this hose to have not just a bend, but a positive bend and outwards to clear the side of the motor. I've had in the past where the thermostat would sit so close to the motor, it would rub, and then I would wear down the aluminum on my valve cover here. So really cool. Good job, C3. I mean, knocked it out of the park, guys. If you do see small kinks like this, okay, it's not really an issue. I mean, it's not folded in half by any means at all. There's still plenty of flow to go through there, and it heats up, it expands, so it's not a problem. So if you see a kink like that, don't fret. I've been dealing with kinks like this coming on this type of system on the KTMs for 4 years now. Never a problem. So yeah, but what a breeze. That was awesome. So we'll continue on with putting our temperature, where am I here? Our elbows we need to install our hoses and the fittings. C3 does supply you with extra hose clamps and extra fittings and extra block offs. You don't need to go out and buy any extra type of hose clamps. They got you all set up. So with your factory hose clamps and what comes with the kit, it's exactly what you need. When you get your connections to go to your thermostat, they do come with some of this red, like not Loctite, but it's supposed to be a sealant. It doesn't work that well, guys. Don't trust it. You definitely want to get yourself some plumber's tape and wrap those threads and wrap them good, including the blocking caps. So the reason why they give you these is because the thermostat comes with multiple holes on it. I believe this one has 1 and then 2, and I can feel a third under there. So we're going to be using all 3 of those. No, sorry, we're going to be using 2 of those. One's for our send, to send the coolant to the bars. The other one is going to be for our, where are you now? Oh, here you are. For our Trail Tech temperature probe, which is already threaded and set to go into those C3 thermostats. So we know our temperature. And the last one, we're blocking it off. The reason why I think they put a third one on there, you want to put a carb heater on the bike. And so you can send the coolant through that as well to heat up, keep the carb hot. So yeah, pretty good. So I'm going to figure out where these go. And then I'll be right back with you.
Eventually.
Okay, let's check it out. We've got the fittings in the thermostat so we can send our coolant lines up to our bars. So it looks like this. So what I've done is I've decided that the back hole way back in here, okay, I capped that one off because it wasn't really readily available. I put my temperature gauge probe in the top here. Okay, so I can very easily take this wire. I'm going to zip tie it and run it out of the way so it can't get damaged, or if it fills with snow, it won't get damaged. Like, everything will be nice. I tend to run my wires in the exact same position that KTM is designed to run their wires. I would like to think that they're smarter than me. So I've run it up along here with the main wiring harness in behind, up through alongside the main wiring harness, comes up through here, and I'll wrap up the stuff in the top, and there it is, a balmy 75 Fahrenheit. So then I mounted in the outlet, or the send to the bars on this pivot piece, which the hose will connect in here. And it's a I can't remember the exact name, but it's a pressure ring hose. Like, once you put it in, little barbs grab it, lock it into place, and they stop it from bleeding. But I'll always make sure that I put a little bit of pressure on this ring here, like that, to make sure it's seated properly. And then same thing goes. I'll insert the other one of these, the straight one, that little guy right there, down here to my send into the engine. And then I'm ready to start running my hoses up and getting my bars mounted. So in case you're wondering, you'd like to see how much thread or plumber stick put on, about that much. Okay, like so. I try to keep away from inside the hole. I'm gonna route it down and then thread it in. Make sure you wrap that in the right direction. Check out a plumbing video. Okay, so let's check it out. We've got our rads back on. We've got our hoses all connected. There's that cross hose we put on last. There's our connections for our heated bars here and then back in here. So this one will just tuck in a bit. That hose will run up right in behind here. Oh, my finger. And then right up there towards the bars. Okay, so now that's all buttoned up, we're going to start talking about running the hoses and cutting the hoses, because we did get the special hose cutter and thread sealant. Shit. Because we have a cutter for our lines from C3. This will keep them nice and straight and perfect so we don't have any issues. And then some assembly grease as well. C3 also sends a thread sealant as well if you choose to want to use this instead of plumber's tape. Okay, so the hoses are pretty durable. I have to say, like, they will take a bit of a beating, but they are plastic. And if you're not careful and you don't route them right way, you could pinch them, or even worse, when you turn the bars and get a full lock on one direction, if you don't leave the right amount of slack, it can yank them out of the connections. They will do that. I mean, it depends how much force. So if you run them right, all's good in the world. So when you do run these, take a lot of time and focus on how they're being sent up and then putting them in place. And before you mount the bars, do full steering locks and make sure they have lots of free space so they try not to rub on anything and they don't get pulled too tight. So we're going to run that one off of that connector right there. Sorry, right there. Straight up beside the radiator, coming out through the triple clamps and up around the bars. And same thing goes with the bottom one, except it'll be a little tighter towards the frame, running up and through here, through the triple clamps again, and into the bars. The hoses come with some of this braided line over top of it. This is to help with rubbing and chafing. So it's good to put these pieces in the areas that might rub up against things to protect the hose. The rest, put it where you think it's safe and out of the way. Obviously, don't put it too close to the exhaust if you can help it. Try to keep it away from super hot things. You don't want the plastic to do any damage to the plastic hose. So the hose is already cut nicely from factory. Right there. So we don't have to recut this, but once we get around to putting it up in the bars, that's when we're going to use our C3 line cutting tool. C3 has specific instructions on their webpage that you can download and look at and tell you exactly how these have to go in to the fittings, because you can put them in and then they'll only go in about that far. You've got to make sure they get full in. So it's like a push in, they get a little bit and then and they go, they won't click, but it feel like it, and they'll go that extra little distance. That's when you know it's past the locking ring inside this. It's locking the hose in place. The hoses can come off if you push down this retainer ring like so, and then the hose will pull right out in case you have to replace it. So these you don't have to replace. These you can after a while. I probably recommend replacing your hoses depending on how much you snow bike, but here in Southern Ontario, we don't get a ton of snow biking in. I'll replace them every 3 years, or unless I see damage. And by using the C3 cutting tool, so the reason why we try to stay away from using side cutters is the side cutters will squish the end. So for example, if I cut the little bit on this on the end of here, right? See how I'm squishing the tube? And then I get that, an oblong shape. Yeah, it's a nice cut, but that won't go in right. Can you squeeze it back? You can, but it's never perfect. So it's always good to use a C3 cutter, and we'll review this when we install the handlebars. One thing you will use a C3 cutting tool for when you're installing initially without cutting is the little lock rings on the top here. Focus. This is for prying in here. Once your hose is in, you push this through and it pushes this ringlet up, locks it in place, keeps it from leaking. Pretty clever. I like the tool so far. This is awesome. Well done. Okay, so that concludes part one of putting the C3 heated handlebars on. This is pretty much the hosing and the thermostat and what we covered. So join us in the next video when we take our brand new C3 bar mounts, our C3 bars with our connections for the inlet and outlet on the coolant lines, and we'll install them on the bike. I just got these sitting here for now out of the way so they're not flopping in my face, and then we'll put on some sweet C3 handguards, some sweet covers, and show you why they are the best handguards for snow biking in the world. All right, take care. See you soon.